I read there's a spike in norovirus.
There's plenty of colds going around and all just sort of general.
Everybody gets together and
That's what winter's all about.
Yay.
Keep my bottle of whiskey handy, take a shot every morning.
there you
We're
go.
already streaming, so you just sold yourself out on that
That's your
one.
supplement.
Everybody who knows me knows me.
Well, yeah. They're probably just like, just one bottle.
Just one, I guess. Not really.
All right, good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Yes, we are.
Okay.
Do you want me to go offline real quick? Okay. We'll end early for. All right, so this is the first Sunday of Christmas or after Christmas. This year we actually get 2 Sundays in the Christmas season. We don't always get that, so it's kind of nice. We get 2 Sundays, and then although so we got this Sunday, and then next Sunday is the 5th.
It's more
Which is still Christmas, although Epiphany's the 6th, so we will probably celebrate a little bit of Epiphany.
But yes, it's on.
Whatever. It'll be nice because we'll have Epiphany kind of celebrated next Sunday, but we'll still have all the Christmas stuff up, so it'll be the best of both worlds. So this.
Now, if John was there, he's gonna say that would have pissed me off.
You're standing.
Yeah, I can hear it in his voice. I mean, that's the beautiful thing. That's how I know you're spot on. It's like, I can hear John saying that. See, it wasn't just the way he said it, but like, I learned to look. Because you see a little twinkle in his eye.
Yeah, before he says it.
And he's kind of like, he's straighten up a little bit. He'd straighten up and like a little twinkle. And you're like, oh, magic's happening. That was always like, oh, goody. Hey, Marty.
Do I come sit?
All right. You're going to make sure I say all the right stuff.
Okay, Marty's here, we can start.
Okay, Marty has arrived.
Hi, Marty.
Party begin.
He wants to get as far away.
Is that
Yes,
Pastor Sean?
you on the lap. Yes, you have a question. Like so you. All right, so the gospel, which I'm preaching on today, is Simeon and Anna, the prophetess. I'm just looking at Simeon, really. So this is the Nunc Dimittis, Lord, you are now letting your servant depart in peace, which we get to sing today, so that's kind of nice. So this is what the theme for Mary's purification, and then for redeeming the first male who opens the womb, all that good stuff. There's a lot of good stuff involved with that. The Old Testament reading from Exodus is kind of it provides the background for that, kind of the encouragement for the people to like don't remember all these things. Remember what the Lord is doing in terms of like bringing you out of bondage, because He's going to fulfill this later, which He does in Jesus Christ. And then Colossians is a nice one about living a life in Christ. I almost decided to go with Colossians because I like it a lot. Also, that it kind of a few things that I've been wrestling with dealing with Colossians. This particular, well, not in particular, but the ideas that it presents here. Anyway, so the sermon today will be focused on Simeon and the consolation that he celebrates, or that he was waiting for, and then kind of wrapped up with New Year, looking ahead, which I usually don't do New Year sermons all that much, but lucky you're getting one this year. So, what would you like to look at?
I have one question.
Only one?
Old Testament, but I would like to do the Colossians one, because that one seems like you're going in that direction.
Oh, okay.
Where it says, consecrate to me all the firstborn, whatever is the first to open the womb among the people of Israel, both of man and of beast is mine. Does this include the female offspring, or is it only the male offspring?
Male offspring.
Where do we get that? Is it
Right there, Exodus.
right there in the text, right there?
Right, yeah.
It's according to the
Because you're not a
laws.
firstborn if you're not a man?
Well,
Is that basically what the rule is though at that point?
well, firstborn in that context is not necessarily just like the first actual born,
Mhm.
but the firstborn wraps up with it also kind of like inheritance, family, and sort of. So yeah, a first child who happens to be female is not like
You
you
can
know
say it. We all
firstborn
know.
in that sense.
It's good.
She's not going to inherit.
Right.
whatever is of that estate.
It's probably a different Greek word or Hebrew word or something
For firstborn,
versus like what we would say. Do you think? I don't know.
I didn't even look up the Hebrew. I didn't even look at the Exodus reading this week. That's how I was just like,
Now we'll know.
you know, when I realized late last night, like, oh, I gotta preach tomorrow. There was a moment over the weekend where I was caught off guard that I had, like, in my long-term plan, I'm like, I can sleep in after that. Oh wait, no, I gotta get up tomorrow morning and preach and do all that stuff. I'm like, oh, I forgot about that. That's why you got your weekly newsletter at 7:30 last night. That was right around the time I
What are you doing?
remembered.
On days like that, you should call Jim and say, you're in charge.
You know, I
It
thought
would have
about
been a
it.
wild, raucous ride, I can tell you that.
I did think about it.
Yeah. Wait till you hear the speeches Alex has prepared.
Oh,
He can lead you through the Our Father.
okay, that was adorable. I got to
know,
hear that
he
the
is
other day.
hilarious when he does that. I'm sorry, Alex is not here yet, dude.
First opens the room, first one. So that's
This
what,
big
verse
sister
12?
doesn't get ready, she's never gonna make it here.
We're looking at verse 12, right? Firstborn.
13.
I was just looking at the firstborn.
Oh, yeah.
And opening up an area of the one opening up of. Yeah. It's the one opening up of. So,
It does say males.
yeah, so it's kind of
12.
the male, you know, being the firstborn, being the one to kind of setting the tone for kind of looking at, like, you know, the firstborn male is the one who is the one who carries on the family. It's on his shoulders.
He's the one to inherit
Yeah,
all the responsibility
right.
of the estate and the leadership and everything.
And so according to Exodus, you know, the firstborn is dedicated to God. So you're supposed to give, you know, the firstborn to God and set him aside for God. And so what Mary and Joseph are doing in redeeming Jesus, essentially anybody who has their first male child to redeem that child will be to go and make a sacrifice to God, to, like, replacement, right? They're paying, you know, giving God the sacrifice. Say, here, we know we're supposed to give our firstborn to you because dedicate him to you. Here is the sacrifice to redeem him so that he is ours, so that he can, you know, lead our family in the future, blah, 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 and all that good stuff. So, you know, in a fun way, you know, you see God is giving us his son, and we're redeeming him. We're like, yes, we want him. Of course, then we go and reject him. So you do have a lot of fun little overlays of the entire salvation history of the people of Israel. So the Exodus kind of.
Biologically, when we read this, we're not thinking with the ancient Hebrew mindset.
Oh Lord, no.
We think biologically when we read this, we just automatically do our cultural thing. This is an equality.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the only reason really why we have this particular Exodus passage is because it explains, like, oh, there was, you know, God at one point said this is what must be done. So when we go to the gospel and say purification, redeeming the firstborn, what is that? So then we go to Exodus and be like, oh, that's what it is. And then we're like, well, that doesn't make any sense to me because this has no connection to me whatsoever. Then we explain it and be like, this is, and we're like, oh, okay.
Paul took it then, was it Ephesians or Colossians, where he says in Christ there's neither male nor female?
Ephesians, Colossians, one of those, right? Yeah, although that's in terms of salvation, in terms of worthiness before God, that there is no hierarchy. So culturally speaking, they're kind of looking at the firstborn as that was a significant kind of thing. For us, it's we don't have that aspect of it doesn't really connect with us. And so that's why for us we don't really. The reason why they're at the temple is we just kind of pass right over that. It's like, that doesn't connect. But when we get to Simeon, who, he's been waiting, and here's Jesus, and he celebrates, like, okay, we get that. We identify with that part of it. Which is basically where my sermon focuses, so. The redeeming, the firstborn and all that, it's, how would I preach that? Oh, that seems like more of a better teaching kind of thing, because then you can kind of layer over it. You got a lot of first fruits kind of stuff. Just we always giving of our first fruits over to God. You could probably layer over, go way back to Cain and Abel and proper sacrifice, and then. Here's Jesus, the true proper sacrifice. So there's a lot of interconnections there that you could work with. That's not where my headspace was. So there's some rationale there. Pull behind the curtain. The mysterious process of figuring out what a sermon's going to be.
When he panicked late Saturday afternoon and said, "Hey, I have to preach tomorrow morning," it wasn't the first thought that popped into his mind.
Honestly, because I felt cool, because Wednesday was Sunday.
Right.
Wednesday was Sunday in my head, so I was like, I was only halfway through the week last night. I'm like,
Was that when you started leafing through your old sermons?
oh no, I didn't. No. Because I date them all, so all the ones that I had were much older for this text. So even when I looked at them, I'm like, ooh, those are not going to be good. Because the older ones I can pull out a couple good ideas and I might build off of it. Some of the more recent ones will be like, I'll just crib most of this. But yeah, they're not good. But no, honestly, this whole week, honestly, my sort of mentality this week has been of. Moving on from Christmas. Not like I'm ready to move on from Christmas, but Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, I preached on the whole perfect Christmas and all that, and we wanted Christmas to be what it was. Yeah, this Christmas was horrible for us. With everybody in the house trading their own germs and we couldn't do this because this kid was feeling sick this day, and we couldn't look at Christmas lights because they weren't feeling good, and so nothing came. There was nothing of our traditions. Even the day after Christmas breakfast, I forgot about that. We have a special breakfast we have. So yeah, nothing came together, and then I walked out. I think I said in the morning prayer, 26. I went outside to get the mail, and it was just 4:00 in the afternoon, and it was drab and gray and quiet. It was like.
It's because your firstborn came home and disturbed the natural order of the universe. That's it. Right, you get them out, you keep them out. You don't bring them back.
There's something to that. But so I was already in that kind of mode of and then the 27th, I took Caitlin, we had to go to Lowe's, and then Target, and we went to Target, and of course, they've already got the Valentine's Day stuff out. And this was the 27th of December, 2 days after Christmas. And then thinking ahead to New Year, and well, okay, so I foolishly scheduled a physical for tomorrow. So, and I'm like, well, I'm going to eat real good today because maybe, maybe I can fool them into thinking no, I'm healthy. So I'm already starting off the end of the year with basically a post-mortem that's going to be wow, you got some stuff to work on, buddy. So that's not pleasant. And then I was coming out of as if to nail this point home, I was pulling out of McDonald's on Saturday or Friday or whenever it was, and Planet Fitness is right across the street. This is the gym I go to. And I see all the cars there, and I started thinking like, oh yeah, well, you know, every year I think like, oh, there's always that influx of people who start going to the gym at the very beginning, and then they clog up all the machines. It's like, oh, I hate that. And I was kind of thinking like, oh yeah, that's the reason why I talked myself into not going to the gym last January, and here I am December thinking like, well, now that people have, you know, enough people have made their way out, oh, next week they're back again. So my whole vibe in the last few days has been like, new year, oh God. What's gonna change? How am I gonna do? I don't know. So I looked at Simeon. And I'll bring it out in the sermon how, you know, his is like, yay, I can die now. Like, you're letting me depart in peace. The end is here, and I've seen the fulfillment. Awesome. And we're starting a new year. But he's like, he's filled with joy. He's happy. He's like, it doesn't matter. You know, yes, I can die now, of course, because I've seen the consolation of Israel. I've seen God's salvation. Here he is. I'm holding him up. So the track I'm going with that is, you know, like, yeah, Simeon, he looks to the promises of God that were from long ago, and not like, you know, the waiting part is what we always do. We're waiting for consolation, waiting for consolation, waiting for consolation. And Simeon's like, here it is. It's like, yeah, that's what we do. We have the consolation. We have good news. I'm still going to have to go to the gym, I guess, but
in between, that's why we have Colossians.
Yeah, and Colossians is excellent for going into, you know, how do we live now? You know, put on then as God's chosen ones, holy and beloved, compassion, kindness, humility, meekness, patience, bearing with one another. If one has a complaint against another, forgiving each other, as the Lord has forgiven you, so you also must forgive. Which probably that right there can be a sermon series all on its own. How do Lutherans interact with one another? We don't do that. And above all these, put on love, which binds everything together in perfect harmony. Sounds nice. And let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts, which indeed you were called in one body, and be thankful. Let the word of Christ dwell in you richly, teaching and admonishing one another in all wisdom, singing psalms and hymns and spiritual songs with thankfulness in your hearts to God. And whatever you do in word or deed, do everything in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks to God the Father through him. Beautiful stuff. The reason why I didn't pick that one is because my particular dealing with this lately has been in various groups and whatnot who are really arguing a lot of Lutheran stuff. I like Ascension. I like coming here because to break from all the Lutheran arguments and the Lutheran nonsense that exists out there. It's like, we don't even get to, yeah, there's the world, that's a problem. But before we even get to that, we have to get outside the Lutheran nonsense that we have to deal with. And there's just, we're so, in all the Lutheran discussions, there's just so much anger and resentments and basically none of this. And really, I mean, every side would look at this, of an issue, of a Lutheran issue, would look at this and say, see, look, we need to strive for perfect harmony and let peace and Christ, rule our hearts, yada, yada. But we don't really focus on the first part. We focus on, no, see, teach and admonish one another in all wisdom. I'm right, I know better, and let me explain to you why I'm right and why you're wrong. Because I'm teaching and admonishing you like Jesus tells us to through Paul here. We're supposed to teach and admonish. Oh, I saw that. Oh, you threw that poor boy down.
Are you admonishing?
No, I'm saying, good job. That's how you do it.
And yet Scripture reminds us that very few should be called to teach,
yeah.
because it is a strict...
Yeah, I've got a lot of feelings about it.
Well, I mean, people think they're speaking truth to power in their
I know.
brains, and all they're doing is creating noise.
Well, and for us, so like, well, you got government kind of structures, and then inside the church. So local, we'll call this synod. Here you've got pastors, teachers. They're at the top, right? Here, government. You've got presidents.
That was gout.
Yeah, I know. I saw that too.
Gout's at the top,
Yeah.
controls everything else.
They're not a pain in the butt, they're a pain in the, presidents and so on and so forth. And I think I'm sure I ranted about this in the morning prayer this week. That feels familiar. Anyway, the problem is that, the assumption that like, oh, well, they all know exactly and they know all better. But the problem is that the higher you go, the more power you have, and then there's that corrupting influence of power. And so so I think Jesus was onto something when he said, yes, a few should be teachers. And I don't think, it's yes because we get, I think it's this. We get so full of ourselves, power and ego. And I see this in a little nutshell, or a nutshell? What was it? In a little microcosm. In various groups that I'm a part of, like I'm happy to be a cog in the machine. Like I'm happy to do things. I like to work and just like, you know what, if there's a task, let me do that. I don't want to be in charge of this machine, this particular one. Like maybe this one over here, fine. But in certain groups, like I just want to be able to be plugged in and do stuff. And then I look to somebody who speaks up and they're taking leadership and they're kind of moving forward. I think, wow, that would be awesome. I want to do that. I want to be that kind of a leader and to do that and to lead this group. But then I think about, I'm thinking like, well, am I doing that because I think I could do it better, or because I want to be like, well, he sounds like yo, and then people are saying, giving him good praise and kudos, and really it's like, no, I just like that and I want to hear that, and the only reason why I want to aspire to that is because I want all that good stuff. And I look at it like, well, I know in that particular case I'm not gifted in that area, and I shouldn't pursue that, but I want it. So this stuff is always a big deal. Not all should be teachers. It's not just the like, well, because not all people can handle it correctly, which is true, but also because you get more of this and you got a lot more egos, you got a lot more power trips, you got a lot more just problems. And so, teaching and admonishing one another in all wisdom. Well, that's one little part. What does he say? Well, okay, put on compassion, kindness, humility, meekness, patience. But we gotta make sure we're saying everything true and right, and ensure everything is done correctly in good order. And this is kind of our Lutheran thing. And this is not unusual. It's like this is the way we do things. We have to do it the right way, and we stand firm. Here I stand. My God, Martin Luther. Here I stand, and it's very firm. And we're not combative, but we're. It's like, you know what? That feels like that's like instinctual to us to be more combative and like, which is probably why we have to be told to put on compassion, kindness, humility, meekness, patience. Luther, for all of his, where's Jim? He'll love this. For all the good things that he said and did, he was not any of those things.
Compassionate.
Meek, patient. Sometimes but he wasn't. I wouldn't say he exemplified a lot of that. He was a firebrand, really. I don't think that was good. Now, I think God used an imperfect person to effect a good change. Like I don't discount any of Luther's work, but he was by no means a saint in terms of like, a Mother Teresa type, sort of like, oh, sweet, gentle, oh, loving. He's like, no, he called the Pope, Satan coming out with a donkey's ass. It's like, that's like, oh, that's reconciliatory. That's seeking some middle ground there. He just that wasn't his thing. So that's why it's like, I don't think, like, don't try to be Lutheran like that. Luther is a good case of do what I say, not as I do, in a way. Like, okay, focus on Christ, you know, God's word alone, you know, what God does through his word and sacraments. Focus on Jesus. If Jesus was to appear, you know, I love what he said, if Jesus was to appear to me and right before my eyes, I would flee to the word of God. Like, I would not listen to that Christ whatsoever. Because God has told me in his word, this is what I need, that this is sufficient, and this is everything I need to know. So why would he send Christ again to me to give me a different whatever? Like that, I'm all about. But, you know, the kind of like, here I stand sort of attitude is like, I mean, yeah, stand firm in it, but, you know, in compassion, kindness, humility, meekness, patience. That's hard. That's a lot harder to do that stuff, to be strong and firm in a loving, meek, compassionate, kind way. And it's just so much easier to do the admonishing, the teaching and admonishing in all wisdom, because that's easier, you know. I can teach you, you know, what the atonement and all. I can teach you all the right things, but to walk with you in love and compassion, that's hard. So now I got to put up with you. You got to put up with me. We got to like forgive and find, you know, a way that we can work together. I'd much rather just tell you this is the way it is. Agree with me.
This is really timely because we've all come through holiday gatherings and having to get along with your family.
Yeah, this might be a pre-Christmas message.
And all the power and ego, the covetousness that goes along.
Yeah,
with
true.
Those of us who don't have the power. And it's like, I wish I was like my sister-in-law because she's got the world by the tail and blah, blah, blah. I don't know what her life is really like.
Well,
You trying to say Christmas didn't go so well? Or?
It was just not perfect. I can't understand
Yes,
it.
it was.
It was his family.
that's why it was perfect.
Yeah. It's great.
Yeah, this stuff is hard. And I mean, I probably should have preached this one.
Yeah, we want to see your second best and see what.
Oh, well, you know, it's
Don't get to do
the message for today is to let you know, like, hey, Christmas was a lot of work. It's easy just to kind of like, just to kind of like, all right, let's ease into it. We'll get tough for Lent. Actually, maybe I'll use this as part of our Lenten thing. I don't know. But yeah, I'd much rather focus on this than Lutheran registered trademark stuff. Just the bureaucracy of it all. That's no fun.
It's not in the Bible either.
What the
Brock.
bureaucracy? Sure it is. It's just Jesus always railed against it. All them Pharisees and scribes and elders and disciples and apostles
they're minor.
screwing up all over the place.
They're on the outskirts.
Yeah. So, 9:30. We got time. Anything else on that in particular? I mean, it's just, man.
How much of the Lutheran, I'm right, you're wrong, Lutheran doctrinal position, that heritage pride, how much of that is the German culture that is pretty strong in this area?
I don't know. I don't have German culture.
Yeah.
I've got the combative Irish culture, so it's like,
Thank God.
not stubborn so much as just like I mean, I'm sure there's some of that. Some of it's. I think there's to a certain degree that German influence kind of. I mean, there is a lot of that in our synod denomination, but in our synod especially, because we're very, tracing back to, Perry County and the Saxons who came over, and, that identity is so locked in. We have about 6 different last names in our synod that are like the superstars. You always hear about there's a lot of Myers and Preußes, and you don't hear Walthers anymore. There's not a lot of Walthers. There's a few other names that any kind of I'm trying to think of a few. Anyway, so there is a lot of that, but it's also that whole that we lean towards the intellectual kind of aspiration of God towards God. That in order to really get closest to God, it's through our intellect, it's through our understanding of doctrine. If we understand doctrine, we'll be drawn deeper into it. Which is not to say that there's not a kind of experiential aspect to it, but I mean that is the doorway. This is the doorway that leads us closest to God, versus that will, pick your door. Do stuff. Guess that would be the law. How do you want to get closer to God? How do you think is the best way? By doing things?
No.
Of course not. We're Lutherans. Can't do stuff. So that door's closed. Emotion? Can't trust emotion. Mind? Yeah, there we go.
Because then we can argue over the little bits.
Well, yeah,
Never get there anyway.
Yeah. And this is what this leads to a lot. Well, this just leads to a lot of doctrinal arguments. This leads to a lot of subjective, emotional, just like, I'm not feeling it, so I'm starting a new church. Here it is because, you split because, pastor said or did something, he wasn't fully Lutheran, whatever that. This is, well, we're not feeling the Spirit anymore, so we need to start a new place. This one we split because
Well, that one just fades away. Eventually you become a good social service organization.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That one, the do stuff, usually becomes a matter of just continuing to do things.
Right. So this one usually, that one fades away. This one you usually go here. You run from emotion, and this one you either go into a cycle of just going back and forth, because the Lutherans who started here are like, just need to feel something. So you go to an emotional driven church, and then after a while you're like, but I'm not feeling okay. So now you go back here. They go and they find, we love the liturgy, and we find meaning and purpose, and we keep going like that, or you get spun out, and really you either go Catholic or Eastern Orthodox at that point, because I think with that you.
Well, actually, they either do that or they just deconstruct altogether.
Well, yeah, you could do that. Which I mean, honestly, I think here's the path. So you can kind of go here, which really
Brings you back there.
is kind of shades of that, which then spews you back out. So, and I mean, the whole point of all this is that this is all of our attempts to draw close to God. And I think once you see this, it doesn't make life any easier, honestly. It just adds a lot more complexity and angst to it. But at least you start to realize that, whatever we're doing, that's the point, we're doing. And Christmas, leading into Easter, is about God coming to us. And here we're always like, which door do we open to get, which pathway? And like, it's the Good Samaritan. The pathway is you're dead on a ditch. There you are. There's your pathway. You want to get closer to God? Jesus comes to you, picks you up, lays you on his horse or donkey, whatever, takes you, binds up your wounds, pays for your bill, and says, don't worry, I'll come back for you. Like, so we just live in that. Now, it's good to know stuff. Absolutely. It's good to feel stuff.
I mean, to be fair, those
to do
first
stuff.
two are who you are. Those first two are who you are. No matter what happens, no matter
Oh,
what
yeah.
you do, you're looking at them in terms of how you approach. But you're gonna have a mind. You're gonna have emotions, no matter
Well, and-
what. So
And you do have this too. I mean,
yeah, but in terms
put
of
on these things. I mean, how we live it out, how we
Right.
live that out. It's all part of it.
But in terms of the general nature of who you are and what you are, you're going to
Oh, yeah.
try to balance out your mind and your emotions and magisterial, ministerial, all this sort of
Oh, yeah.
thought. Either way, whatever balance you approach it with.
Yeah.
If you get too Vulcan in your thinking, you're not going to have any emotion and you won't care, and that doesn't make a good minister.
Feels
Have we
good.
moved on to Star Trek? I thought we were still in Star Wars. And
I'm
it's
on
been-
last night still. I'm very tired. So,
I mean, that's the perfect analogy, though. That is how they are.
sometimes. Well, I mean, the academics.
Yeah.
When you watch all of the New Testament scholars, I put in big old quotes that are out there, and they talk about things. They have no emotion to it. They have no
Yeah.
anchor holding them in. They're looking at it purely from an academic mind
And
point of view.
a lot of Lutherans are taught to preach like that. Honestly. Academic kind of sermons. You should, do it that way, but then also preach it that way too. I mean, definitely read scripture that way. No emotion, don't inject anything into it. But then, it's supposed to be, sometimes they're told not to get too, don't get too animated back there, because if you get too animated, people will think you're you're going through that door. You can't have that. But yeah, balance is everything, and balance sucks because you gotta balance. You gotta try. I mean, if you're walking a tightrope, you really gotta focus and concentrate. It takes a lot of effort to do that.
That's a January sermon just waiting to happen.
I know, right?
And take it out of the context of God, put it into the context of your marriage and how you interact with your husband or wife. All mind, all emotion. I mean, we've all seen some of those as well, either very cold people or people that are hot messes.
You just bring home cookies. It's all.
Yeah, I do, yeah.
Well, I do.
But we sometimes get lost, I think, in the spiritualizing of it, and it's like, how do you interact with anybody?
Yeah.
Is it all intellectual? Is it all emotional? That works out well.
It's all balance.
Yeah.
But balance is hard. It's easier to pick a horse.
Just get rid of people.
I mean,
that makes life easier.
that's kind of the thing. Like,
Wally.
it's easy to do just this, because if you have the right, or you just okay, it's good. If it's just emotion, well, cool. If you're feeling it, then good, you're good. It's hard to balance this all stuff.
That Lutheran heritage thing, though, as proud as those of us who have German heritage can be of that, it hurts the purpose, it hurts the gospel.
It can.
It hurts, it excludes people. It's just,
It can.
yeah, you can have your sauerkraut and bratwurst at home, go, yeah, okay, this is our soul food, cool. But, and yeah, we do. I mean, my dad was one of the greatest sauerkraut makers that ever lived, but it's still.
Comments made here on the video do not necessarily reflect
No,
everybody
I
else
think it's
sitting
great.
here.
I think we're going to have the most confusing community outreach next year. Is we're going to have Ascension Soul Food Night, and we're just going to advertise it as that, and people are going to come. It's just going to be it's going to be bratwurst and sauerkraut and sauerbraten and all this great stuff, and people are going to be very confused,
Yeah.
and it's going to be glorious. I like it. Brought to you by Mary Cruz. I can sign your name to that one, right? Mary Soul Food Nights.
At my home church, they had a sauerkraut supper every year.
Oh, it's very
Yeah.
good. Very common.
Which, I mean, there's nothing that, and like there's that aspect of like, is our Lutheran heritage, culture, whatever bad? It's like, no.
No,
What we do with it can be,
yeah.
and that's and that's. But I mean, that's what people can do with any of these. I mean, if you're saying like you must go through this door, well then yeah, that's a problem. I mean, when you're saying you must do anything, that's the problem. And in our circles, the arguments are dumb. And we're all just like,
They're all dumb.
well,
All
they
the
are.
arguments
They all
are
are.
dumb.
It's just this is where ours exist mostly. So this is
So what if we
This is
just
our playground.
exit it out and just say it's God's grace?
well,
Just accept each other.
but
But you can't
but how do you
really
know?
exit out.
How do you know?
The word, yeah, the word, the
It's balancing it. It's
Because if you have no theology or doctrine, then what does the emotion stand on?
right.
Self.
So you got to have it all, but it's just and so we try, but then we find our within that we just lean on like, you know, worship style is a big one, you know, which is the proper worship style. I'm not going on record and saying anything because I want to start off my year quiet. Worshiping in truth, right? In spirit and in truth. That's what Jesus says. Go with that. It needs to have structure. It's like, yeah, okay, sure. Every worship has structure. Even the craziest Pentecostal letter or rip has a structure, even if, I mean, loosely, there is a vague structure about it.
But that's the problem with that too, is usually you stay up at the sloganeering line and nobody ever gets down into the underlying assumptions and questions that why does structure exist? What are you attempting to do with structure?
Where I will, we'll end on this one. Where I think Lutherans are good, what is really one of the more valuable things about Lutherans that we have is this idea that worship is what God delivers to us, or when we worship, it's about God delivering to us. Because I think too often, and even in Lutheran circles, I think even when we get that right, like yes, it is about that, but this becomes equal with faith in terms of what we're doing, how we're doing, the nuts and bolts of that worship. What does it look like? How it should be? Because if it is God delivering well, we need to get it right. We need to make sure it's done right, the correct way, yada, yada, yada. And that really becomes more about where we truly experience faith. Where, again, I go with the Samaritan. Where I've found personally, and this might be anecdotal, but where I've experienced my faith, God coming to me the most, is when I'm there. Now, worship delivers and provides everything I need when I'm there, and is supporting me for when I get there over and over and over again. And so that is, this brings me back to, God brings me back to Him and then delivers and keeps, He is the one who brings me, draws near and all that good stuff. And doctrine is crucial to understanding, how this works and sussing all this stuff out and all that. But the problem I have with this, particularly in our synod right now, is the arguments being had about this is like, well, we're talking about an hour and a half a week, both sides. Whether it's more kind of this is outdated, but the contemporary crowd, the missional crowd, who's like, worship has to be, more of this and experiencing whatever, versus the more traditional confessional crowd, which is like, no. They're both talking in terms of an hour and a half of your week. That's what gets you. If we get this right.
How long are you going to preach today?
Oh, probably about 12 minutes.
Okay, good. Gotta keep them down.
But I mean, really, it's like that's why I don't. I would love to. In my head, I want to preach to you where I give you fun little sayings that you remember throughout the week, and so as you come back to me, it's like, oh, I remember from Sunday, a little fancy phrase. I'm never that creative. And why? Why do I want that? I want that.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily good for you. Maybe it's a good saying, I don't know. But I want that. I would much rather deliver to you right now like, hey, you're loved, you're forgiven, you're at peace. Take this with you throughout the week. And hey, when you find out, that the world is hard and sin and all this stuff. Come back and we'll redo this again and again and again. And I just like this ongoing thing where most of our faith is like out here. An hour and a half is not going to get you, like that you do it right. Okay, now you're set. It's like, no, you receive.
That's really what Paul's saying here in Colossians.
Yeah.
This is how our life should look out there.
But teaching and admonishing. But yeah, it's a constant struggle. I'm so happy I'm Lutheran. Don't get me wrong. That's good, but I think my understanding of being Lutheran is this constant struggle. I think a lot of Lutheranism boils down to today is doing it the right way, being the right kind of Lutheran. Or don't get me started on any. No, I don't even want to go there.
Quit. Stop.
Standards. Anyway, it's a wrestling thing. That's why I love Jacob wrestling with God. God comes and gets you in a headlock, taps your knee so it's out of joint. And you're like, ah! And the point is, you're like, I won't let go until you bless me, God. And he's like, you're nothing. And then boop. Yeah, see, all it took was a boop, and you're gone. That's where it's at. Anyway, ranting done.
Quit while you're behind. That's the rule.
What?
Said quit while you're behind.
Yes.
That's the rule.
There's not a dead horse that I can't beat anymore. All right. See you in church.
Thank you.